All right, guys, we're back. Had to start it off just giving you guys a quick message and I guess a sad update. We took the week off last week because we had a bad loss in our family. My sister-in-law passed away uh, a week ago. We're mourning, we're grieving, we're trying to pick up the pieces of a broken time. It's not easy right now. Grief hits us at different times. We're just trying to find a new path forward, whatever that could possibly be. Um, my I've had friends that have suffered loss, and the advice they said and the way they told me to think about grief is like imagine grief as a box, right? When it first happens, it's a very tight box, and the ball's just bouncing around, so you're constantly in grief. And as time passes, that box gets bigger and bigger, and but the ball keeps bouncing, so that grief hits differently at different times. We're hurting, we're grieving, we're angry, we're stunned, we're just trying to figure it out. So trying to get back to some kind of normalcy. So appreciate everybody that's reached out to my wife and I, everybody that's supported the GoFundMe for the girls. Michelle, we miss you, we love you, and it's not easy, but we're trying to figure it out every day. Yo, what are you doing right now?
The big V. Look, man.
All right, man. Let's just jump right into this shit.
I made my wife wake up and drive me there anyway. Is it major?
Pasó con eso?
Muy bien, hablar español. ¿Qué pasó, papá? ¿Cómo estás? Any questions?
Now, when you bought that sweater, right? You just go, fuck it. I'm going full Mr. Rogers. You've tuned into the Man Chatter podcast. Yo, what up, my brother? How you been, man?
How's it going, man?
Hey, man.
It's well, I shouldn't ask how's it going. I mean, you and I have been in touch for the last few weeks. Obviously,
Well,
you're going through a tough time.
it's not. Yeah.
And there's nothing that I can say on air that I haven't told you. I know you've had a lot of people reach out to you, and everyone deals with it their own way, right? A lot of people say, you got to take your time, and eventually you start doing the things you used to do and get back to some normalcy, and that helps. I guess in that sense, picking up the podcast again maybe helps to just kind of get back to doing things. So, but I can't express like my condolences, and I'm glad for the friendship that we've had. I'm glad that I've been able to. Hopefully, I've reaching out to you and to talk through it. But I can't imagine what you're going through, man.
It's this one. Like, look, we lost somebody last year who meant a lot to my wife and I. And a year later, it's a terrible like roller coaster tidal wave of emotions. You know what I mean? Like when you start to feel one normal, another one hits, right? Like I wasn't, look, I'll be honest, like I wasn't prepared for like, and I was telling my wife earlier, like I wasn't prepared for like the guilt you have when you lose somebody who's that close, where you're like, man, like you think about like the moments that you should have had with them, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, maybe if I wouldn't have, you know what I mean? If I wouldn't have said this, is like, but my wife told me like, look, you can't think about it like that. Like you're like putting guilt and stress on yourself isn't a way for you to show how much you love them, right? Like how much you cared about them. That's not, you know what I mean? Like they're not thinking about those moments at all. They're thinking about the great times they had with you and all this stuff. It's hard, dude. Like it's so fucking hard. Like it's not just not like they're just not prepared for it, right? Like there's never everybody goes like, oh, everybody loses somebody, but like the pain and the grief is it feels so singular. You know what I mean? Like and that stuff you're going through is like, and like I mean, like just seeing how my wife is hurting, like it hurts. You know what I'm saying? Like, and there's nothing I could do. Like, there's no words I can say. There's, just being there and try to do. Appreciate you like reaching out, and, like just trying to have conversations about different stuff, so it doesn't crowd your every second. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you're not. So that's like, I guess that's like the best you can do. But thankfully I go to therapy. My therapist told me some stuff to do that talk with my wife about. Like I'm a big proponent of mental health and therapy and stuff like that. So that was helpful. But it still doesn't take away the sting and the shock. Like I don't want to get into the particulars. Like we've talked about it. We keep that
Hmm.
offline.
Yeah.
About everything that's happened, but it doesn't make nothing makes it any easier. Nothing does. Like going through pictures, like talking with family. You know what I mean? Like it just nothing does. So you know what I mean? Like I appreciate you like reaching out, like having us like talking crap about a bunch of different stuff. So it's not the only thing I think about because like for
Hmm.
me it's like a fog, right? Where like I'm just kind of like going through it and like it just still because it still doesn't seem real, right? Like it's it's one thing when you hear of somebody who's passed that you hadn't seen in a long time, but like when you see somebody like and you hear her voice because like her and my wife will talk all the time and like it's different. Like it was more present, right? That's why it hits harder.
Yeah.
But we just try to pick up the pieces and try to find whatever that new normal is, right? Like it's not wearing purple because it was her favorite color. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, and as always, man, fuck cancer forever.
Yeah. Fuck
That's just
cancer.
that's just what forever, like for the rest of forever, for the rest of forever. So yeah, man, try to find some normalcy. Try to get back to podcasting. Like I asked my wife, I was like, "Yo, like I want a podcast." Was like, I feel guilty that I want a podcast. Like because like I just like should I just like she's like you can't being miserable doesn't like she said like I said like doesn't show how much you cared. You know what I mean? Or how much you
Right.
loved it. Like it doesn't. That's not how that works. I was like, okay, and that makes sense. So try to get back on the horse and see what's up, man. So yeah, man, how you been, my brother?
Well, I haven't been bourbon infused. I can tell you that. I usually only drink when we podcast. Um,
Facts. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And then when I do, I pour myself more than I should. So I'm definitely gonna be bourbon
Pardon me.
infused tonight.
Yes. I gotta be up early tomorrow, but I was like, screw it, man. I
Although
bought a
if you
new
hear me
glass. Shout
speaking
out
right
to
now, it sounds like I've been drinking for like the whole week. Like I don't know why my voice is sounding the
easily.
way it is, but
You got that Stu God's voice right now.
yeah, I got this two guts. I need some of that. What is it? Chamomile tea to help soothe the
Yeah,
vocal cords.
for real. I bought a new bourbon glass today at Marshalls. Shout out to Marshalls, $6.99 for 4 glasses. And I honestly bought it. I don't know if you can see it. See that little bubble,
Uh
like
huh.
right in the can. That's
Yeah.
honestly the reason why I bought the glass. Like I could care less how the glass is cool or whatever, but I just like the little bubble. I was like, that's a cool little
Well,
look.
it's like this.
So
This one
that's
came with the bottle. It's got a key, the larceny.
yeah. See, oh there you go. Yeah.
It was yeah. Like I could have bought the bottle by itself, but if I bought the kit, it was like an extra $1.50 or something. It was ridiculous. So I said, yeah, I'll pay the extra $1.50 for
Mhm.
a novelty, whiskey
Yeah, that's a
bourbon
cool little
rocks
glass.
glass.
Yeah, we figure it out, man. Yeah, absolutely. Yo, man. So what's going on with the fam, man? Like you were telling me earlier, like your oldest can't come home, man.
Yeah, man. I found out last night. Is a like a 13-hour time difference. I forget because we're the only
Yep.
idiots that do uh daylight savings time. So it's usually a 12 or
Yes.
13 hour,
13.
depending on what time of year. I
Yep.
think it's a 13-hour time
Hmm.
difference season. Okinawa. Japan just recently closed all their inbound flights. I think he
Hmm.
has to fly into Japan and then fly out. So his leave got denied. So so yeah,
Man.
so we were expecting to see him for the holidays. That's not gonna happen. So that sucks. Obviously, we're
Yep.
bummed out. I
Yep.
know Mel's disappointed. Um, and yeah, I can't say the C word uh, or the V
Yep.
word.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking
Okay.
about the C or the V word, I know it's not those two C's or V words. We could probably say those. And depending on what side of the pond you're on.
Right. Right.
So,
Right. Right. Right.
but no, it's the other
It's
ones that get
listen.
people banned over the last 18 months or whatever it's been. But that's the reason why he
Gotcha.
can't fly
Yep.
because they changed those protocols, and he's stuck. So we're actually headed down south. We're going to Miami for a couple of days, leaving next
Oh
Friday,
yeah.
driving
All right.
through. We'll be in Miami the weekend, so like Saturday, Sunday. We get there Friday night, so Saturday, Sunday, maybe Monday, and
Okay.
then we head back up to Virginia Beach. We're gonna stay there through New Year. So yeah,
Oh yeah, that's right. Cool. Yeah, man. Let me. So you're saying next weekend?
yeah, next weekend, because that's when
Okay.
Javi, that's when the kids get out of school, and
Yep.
he's on a 2 week break, and I'm taking the same time off. So we might stay
Okay.
down south, whether it's Miami or whether like it's a little bit farther up north in Florida afterwards for a few more days. Since
Hmm.
my son's not coming home from overseas, we might stay in Florida for a couple extra days and then head over to Virginia. But I think we're
Yeah.
headed
Let me
over
know, man.
there.
We'll try
Yeah,
to. Let me know. We'll try to link up. Like if you're down on my, I'll see what my work schedule is. Like if I drive down, maybe drive down Saturday and we'll meet somewhere. You know what I mean? Like grab something to eat or something. And I haven't seen you since you came up to the house, so definitely got to hang out, man. It's been too long,
yeah. I
brother.
have to. So we have to redo all our plans. That's why I hadn't told you anything because we just found out. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Thought
starting
Tony
from
was coming
now,
home.
so I was like, all right, so now
Yeah,
we're not, now we're going to Miami. Maybe we'll stay longer. Maybe we'll stop in Melbourne. Maybe we'll swing by, uh, I was going to say,
middle of nowhere.
I'll say the villages. We'll stop
Yeah,
in the middle of nowhere
yeah.
because I
Full
don't
stop right
think
there.
that place
Yeah.
deserves a name.
No, no. There's not enough people. It's not enough people. It
So
really isn't, dude.
we'll figure something out.
It's a pass through.
Mm,
Yeah, it's just a pass through. But yeah, man. Yeah, it'd be good. It'd be nice to see you, bro. Yeah, just trying to, trying to find our footing with whatever the new normal is. So it's just kind of been, honestly, the last month has just kind of been a blur.
yeah.
Like everything just kind of went down. So it was like a lot of the stuff that like we talked about, like me looking at different paths. You know what I mean, career
Hmm.
wise and all this stuff.
Hmm.
Like it's all kind of taking, you know what I mean, a backseat just because like I can't, like my brain can't comprehend decision making like that
Yeah,
at this point.
of course.
You know what I mean? Like me and my wife talk about like it's hard to like figure out just like what I'm gonna wear. Like you know what I mean? Like it's like what to do with. You know what I mean? Like every decision just seems so much harder because like you're just not clear headed enough. So we're just trying to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like so
everything
that
takes a
like
back seat. I mean, I'm sure like
yeah, everything
that's the
does
one thing on your
everything.
mind right now. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's why like I you know what I mean. Like I throw myself into like YouTube. Like sleeping escapes me. You know what I mean? It's hard to fall asleep. Like right, like because you're just in
Yeah.
constant thought and wake up in the middle of the night. So I've been watching a lot of Dan Lebitard. Shout out to Metal Art Media. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get in on trying to get in on
All
that
that
Sun fight,
DraftKings
bro.
money.
Like I'm yeah, that DraftKings money. Shout out to Pat McAfee getting 30 mil.
Really? Damn.
Yeah, he got 30 mil. I think from I might be wrong. You might want to Google that with your incredibly fast internet. But either from FanDuel or DraftKings, they
Uh
got
huh.
30 mil a year. Just came out today. The announcement. So shout out to them, man.
Nice.
Like it's exciting. Not that like we'll
Yeah,
get there,
FanDuel.
right? Like hopefully we do, right? There's that hope that like one day we pop off. But the fact that like there's so much new ways to make money, like new media and new avenues that weren't there before. You know what I mean? Like I think
Yep.
Ariel Hawani is with like Substack. You know what I mean? Making money. Dan Batard makes his money now with, you know what I mean. They started their own company. I think they
Yeah, they're
sold
a
a
media
bunch of
company.
ideas to like Apple. Yeah, like Apple TV. You know what I mean? So like they're doing their thing. So like they have this it's called like Metal Larkers, right? Like they have a bunch of different podcasts on the network,
Yep.
and they had a conversation about NS NS Cancer
Freedom.
slash NS Freedom now, right? Like I guess
Yep.
this is his name now. They had a really interesting conversation, and I don't. You could approach it any way you want. Like I thought it was interesting when it's like three insiders, right? When they talk about it, like I just like he goes at how he goes at LeBron. Like this isn't a LeBron defense, but like how he's wearing like these free China, you know what I mean, and all this stuff, but he's doing it with Air Jordans, like with no sense of irony. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just it's wild, man. What do you think about that whole like? I'm sure you listened to the pod, right? Like the conversation because I sent it to you, or as much as you could because it was like 55 minutes.
No, I think when you
I
sent
thought
it to me, I was already listening to it, and then this morning
okay,
they posted the video because I actually, since I work from home, I prefer to watch it.
yes,
And so I switched over halfway once I saw the video posted. I just picked up the rest of the episode and watched it, and it was dude, I can't even remember Tom Haberstroh and
Howard Bryant
Howard
and
Bryant
Amin and Hassan.
and Amin Al
Yeah,
Hassan.
Howard
And
Bryant and Amin and Hassan. Yep.
yeah, and Amin says something that um he was cutting straight to the chase. Like Tom was like, well, is he
Yep.
maybe just not not I don't want to say not intelligent enough, but Amin Al Hassan was like, no, he's just doing it because he heard the bell ring, right? He did this,
Yes.
he got
Yes.
the attention. He's only
Mm-hmm.
29, but he's a third string center in Boston. He said this, got the attention, his face, his name, everything's in the limelight. Everything going viral now. You don't need 15 minutes, it's 15 seconds of fame.
No.
And so he's got his 15
Yeah.
seconds now, and he's gonna keep doing it. Does he actually believe in these causes? I'm sure that he does. Obviously, he came from Turkey. Under that, like his father faced 15 years in prison because I believe he
Yep.
participated in a coup to take over the government. You can't. He's coming from a place where it's the opposite of the U.S. and unfortunately, that's what happens with people that come from those places. People that come from Venezuela, which is where I came
Mm-hmm.
from Venezuela before it turned into what it is now. Same thing that happens to
Yep.
Cuban people that come from these places, these regimes, where you're not allowed to say anything. You can't criticize the
Anything. Yep.
president,
Mm-hmm.
any part of government. Like you can't criticize some city official or city council because you're locked up, thrown in some cave, in some cell, and never seen or heard from again, right?
Yep.
And so
Yep.
Enes Freedom is doing the same thing.
Yep.
He goes on Fox, he's dancing, he says something about he says the equivalent of shut up and dribble.
Shut up and
Right?
drill.
He's like, hey,
100%.
you should appreciate your freedom. No one has it like this. Like you should see how people have it in Turkey or in fucking Mogadishu or whatever he wants to say. And
Yep.
and so what dude, why can't I remember his name? I haven't had that much bourbon yet. What Amin said, and it's true, and some people, a lot of people fail to realize is that they want to compare the US to these other countries. And no, that
Yes.
you compare the US to the US.
To the U.S. Yep.
Like he said, you could be living in the projects and have a 55-inch screen TV. That doesn't mean you have it good.
Yep.
Like you might have it better than what you have it somewhere in, I don't know, in somewhere in Africa, in Nigeria, where people are living in shanties with no water, no electricity,
Brazil.
right? And in
Yep.
Brazil.
Yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
that you don't compare it to those places, you compare it to the US, and
Yep.
specifically, obviously, you compare yourself to other citizens in the US. And so it's just funny that he's taking that stance, Cantor Freedom, because 80% of the league that he plays in is black.
Well,
And
that's I think that's the thing, right? Like like we have a very like it's funny to people on a macro scale, right? But to us growing up where we grew up, it makes perfect sense. Right? Like we saw a bunch of Enes Freedoms growing
Mhm.
up. Like
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like the Cuban culture and the Venezuela. That's
Yeah.
we talked about it before Enes Freedom. We talked about it when we
I
talked
have
about our
family coming
colorism
over
stuff
now
or
that they're like, well, this is so
exactly.
good. What do you complain about? Capitalism, baby.
Exactly,
Okay.
bro. Like it's this thing where like we're not comparing. I'm not comparing us to Panama. I'm not comparing
Yeah.
the U.S. to Venezuela. Like you compare like it's like sometimes like I think things right and we talk about things, but like when somebody else says it, like I've never thought about that simplistic way of looking at it. Like no, you just compare the U.S. to the U.S. Like you if we're this anomaly right of a situation, the why would you compare it to anything else? Like we had to compare one citizen to the other. Like if
Right.
you're saying we all have equal rights, then let's compare. You know what I mean? Let's look at the resume. Let's look at
Exactly.
like what you can say and what I can say. Right? Like he's being used as a prop and as a grift. Right? Like and we talked about it as like it's when you're a carnival barker, right? Like as Amin called
As
them,
Amin called them, yeah.
it's yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the grift, right? Because he likes the attention. You know what I mean? Like because like it is incredibly shocking, right? Like when you come from a country that's literally trying to kill you, right? And you can like openly criticize the government of this country, right? Well, like in other countries, you'll get murdered in the street or get put in prison for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Of course that's shocking.
Look,
But
that
that's not the
logic just
comparison.
makes no sense to me, man. He's saying, love your freedom. Look how free we are in this country, while turning around and saying, just shut up and stop talking about how bad you
Yeah,
have it here. Well, no, like
exactly.
that's the point of freedom,
That's
right?
the freedom. That's the point
To
of freedom.
point
Yeah.
out the inequalities, how one set of
Yes.
citizens doesn't have the same standards as another set of citizens. That's the whole point. That's why you left Turkey. It wasn't because capitalism, was because you literally couldn't say that the government was doing this, that they weren't standing up for your rights. And
Yep.
you're saying I love this freedom, but stop criticizing the government. I don't get that logic. You just escaped that, and now you're coming here saying
Yeah,
having a U.S. flag. I love this. I'm changing my last
yeah,
name
we're
to
in a U.S.
Freedom,
citizen
while
T-shirt.
telling people to
Yeah,
shut up and stop
yeah,
criticizing the government. That just I don't know if he doesn't understand that irony, if he just enjoys the attention he's getting, or
no,
like Amin and a couple and Howard Bryant pointed out, maybe he's just angling for an after basketball career. He knows that his
yeah,
career might be coming to an end as a third stringer. He's getting paid like two to 3 million.
two,
You know,
yep, two point
but
seven. Yeah,
yeah, 2.7. Boston might
mm-hmm.
cut ties and decide, hey, this is costing us money because now we're not getting our we're not getting televised over in China, and they want some of that China money. And
Yeah. That
you know,
Boston crowd loves him.
yeah,
Yeah,
he might be the next what is it? I was about to say the wrong name. Candace Owens. You know,
yeah, yeah.
he'll
I
he'll
mean,
he'll,
a
he'll play his
proper
part.
grifters. Listen, man, grifter's gonna grift, right? Like it's a very look. It's very, and this could roll in. We could just roll these two in together. Use Enes Freedom and critical thinking stuff, right? It's
Yeah,
very funny when like the people are like, "Oh, don't criticize this country," while their entire network is criticizing the current government, right? Because it's
right.
not the party they align with, right? Like it's like, oh, don't yo just shut up, don't say anything negative about this country. The channel you're currently on, brother, that bow tie guy is openly criticizing the policies and bills that are being put forth by a party he doesn't agree with. That's criticizing the
Exactly.
government. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, like I'm not even like you could be on the left if it was the left side of it, you were like, oh, don't criticize this country, but then you're going to criticize because is DT in office. You know what I mean? Like it's the same
Right.
hypocrisy and irony. You know what I'm saying? Like it's this thing where like, oh, don't criticize this
And to be
hierarchy
yeah,
that benefits us.
And to be
Yeah,
clear,
go
both
ahead.
either side, whether it's Fox or whether it's CNN, left, right, like they do the same thing. I don't know when they
Yeah,
stopped reporting the news. It's been a long time. I don't go to them for the
100%.
news, right? It's
Me
their
either.
entertainment and
I go to Mike Ryan.
their opinion based. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Go to
yeah,
Mike
yeah,
Ryan if you're a delusional
yeah, that's it.
fan, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, it's entertainment. It's opinion based. It's very editorialized, and it
Mhm.
can't be news if someone is giving you one
Their
side of
opinion.
their story, of the same story, and
Yep,
then you switch to another channel and they're talking about the same story in a completely different manner, right? So
yep,
where is the truth? Because there's when you talk about people have an argument, there's his side, her side, and then the truth. So
yep.
they're CNN and Fox and whoever falls along the left and right, they tell their side of the story. So then how can people actually know what the truth is? And that's how we end up
Exactly.
being divided as a country along political lines or liberal conservatives. And then God forbid you say something once that possibly just a little bit questions or disagrees with what you typically agree with. If you're a liberal and you say something that's
Mhm.
maybe questioning the liberal agenda, now all of a sudden you're an anti V word.
Yep.
Um, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
and I'm
Mhm.
referring to the Trevor Noah clip on Comedy Central
Yep. Yep.
where
Yep.
I'm trying
Did
to
you
pull it
watch
up here.
the Jordan?
Go
Did
ahead.
you watch the Jordan Klepper liberal one that he did about the anti-Vs, about the AVs in California, where they're like, oh, all you need to do is like breathing exercises and eucalyptus teas, and you'll be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that whole. I thought like it's it's baffling to me, right? Like, and look, the quickest way for me to disarm like conversations and debates that people want to have from I'm on look I've been very honest, like I'm on the left side, right? Like where I like look, I used to a year ago, 2 years ago, used to want to debate and all that shit, and now I'm just like, nah, I don't watch the news anymore. Like I don't do like I'm 100% less angry and upset about everything. You know what I mean? Like the
Hmm.
things we talk about, like, oh, that's and like we'll send each other like YouTube clips of this person talking about that person talking about it. You mean be it a Russell Brand or a Joe Rogan or a Dan Lebitard and talking about the same thing. Like, oh, that's it. Like we get talking like not talking points, but we get ideas and thoughts from those three different things because those are three different walks of life, right? Like that's a British person, that's a European or a British person and Brand, that's a wealthy white guy in Rogan, and that's a I guess wealthy immigrant in Dan Lebatard. So those are three very different perspectives
Yeah.
on one specific thing, right? And then you formulate your own opinion, like be it right, wrong, or indifferent. You know what I mean? Like, but to get to the point where like I'm gonna want to like start talking genocide or civil war or oh this like they're clearly trying like that's where like the conversation loses me. You know what I mean? Like we're like I had a conversation yesterday with one of my doctors, right? Like and he's liberal, like he's an older liberal Cuban, which is a fucking unicorn. And he's like, "Oh, this country's headed to this country's headed to a civil war because it's gonna be ideological." I was like, "Dude, like, but we're like, if the left, if that's it, like the left is losing that ideological war because there's no, you know what I mean? Like the right is so much better, exponentially better at constantly fulfilling in that information, right? And
They're great
it's not
marketers,
to say they're the
great
best
PR.
marketers, bro.
I'm glad you brought that up,
Dude,
man.
they have the best PR. The best PR firm of all time, dude, is the right. Like without, and the left is purposefully like I say the left like it's a very small group. Like a Nancy Pelosi is on left, right? She's the 1990s Republican. Like
Yeah, yeah,
anybody
for
that's
sure.
been in office that long, these are all like old conservatives, but they're just not hateful, right? Like they're very much so like, hey, look, let's just not give black people or brown people money, but let's not say that we're not giving them money. We're just gonna say, oh, we need to have give it to the rich so they could trickle it down. Like you say certain words and phrases and coded
Yeah,
language for your racism and your bigotry and your capitalistic terrorism on the poor. Right, like you say, you do it that way. You don't do a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Lauren Boebert. You know what I mean? Like you don't do that. Like that's where it gets a little bit more villainized in a way.
yeah. But see, that's the problem. You mentioned earlier that and I've been talking about this, right? That there's going to be at some point a civil war or some kind of revolution. There will like bloodshed possibly, and not that we're calling for violence.
Yeah,
I'm seeing the way that the country's going, and unfortunately, like you said,
we
and like
saw it
your
January 6th, right? We saw it.
yeah,
We saw
and
we
like
saw
your
the
friend
we
said,
saw how like yeah
or your unicorn friend said,
yeah
that it's going to be along ideological lines, conservatives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans. That's not how it should be, though. That's unfortunately what this country is playing into because of how divided we are. How just like Hurricanes fans, God forbid, I don't know how you and I stayed friends when I went to Florida State and I was a Seminole fan. But
I
just
mean
like
that's because
football,
I'm
like
not
college football
irrational.
fans are people like sports fans are they get into fights in the parking lots, right? Like that's how we are about
Yeah, so
politics in this
stupid.
country.
Yeah,
But that civil war that I read the article you sent me. Ray Dalio, the hedge fund
the
manager, who's a
billionaire.
billionaire,
Yeah,
and he's saying that it's going to
yeah.
be along those lines. But that's not what it should be. That's what we're like. Unfortunately, we're too unintelligent to realize that.
We don't think
Yeah, this
critically about
guy
it. Yeah,
doesn't believe what I believe in. He's a Republican or he's a Democrat, so he must be against me. No, it's against it should be the
hmm
haves and have-nots, right? The elite and
yes,
then the
yes.
rest of us. But everywhere that I read, your unicorn friend mentioned it. I don't know where he read it, but this guy Ray Dalio is like planting that seed already. I'm sure other folks are talking about it. Other elites are talking about these things, where it's
hmm
going to be a civil war between left and right. Because the
Yep,
true civil war should be between we the people and the elite that keep
yep,
taking from we the people. That's what it should be.
yep.
And instead, we don't see that. We just see this guy
Nope.
has different political. These guys golf together. They have lobbyists and corporations that donate to them. They don't give a damn
Yep.
about you. Like they
hmm
don't,
hmm
left or
hmm
right, they don't. They
Not
care about
as
the people that put money in their pockets, these super PACs. That's
yep,
all that matters. And
yep.
we don't see that.
That's it.
And unfortunately, you say things like that and you're considered a radical or
Yeah, and
someone.
it's blatantly obvious.
Yeah, yeah. It it's
hmm
obvious if you just kind of stop and pull yourself away, right? Like as a Canes fan, if you like stop and pull yourself away and realize that they made the wrong choice again, you apply that same logic. You stop and you just look and say,
Oh,
you know
you
what?
son of a.
What are we fighting about? Like we're neighbors. We should be brothers. If
Yep.
you're a neighbor and you live with this next to this person for 15, 20 years, but they're a Republican and you're a Democrat, you're just gonna fight. You're gonna fight to the death if the
I know.
civil war comes when you both are
I know.
probably in the same social stratus, have the same type of struggles, may have kids that go to
hmm
college or don't go to college, or you can't afford this, can't afford that. Because if you're living next to this guy and you have different political leanings, chances are that dude's not a billionaire. He's not elite. you are probably in the same
Yep.
social class. You should not be fighting each other. And if you just kind of stop and look at that and really look at things logically, we would have realized it a long time ago. But the elites, the power that be the ruling class, which is the government, I don't believe that they have our best interests at heart. We just, I don't know, we're brainwashed. We can't think for ourselves on the left
Well,
or right, because obviously
the
we're pitted against each other.
yeah, the effectiveness of propaganda and social media has propelled it to a level that I don't think we could have foresaw. Right, like I remember when social media first started, it wasn't anything political. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure there might have been like those admin groups or whatever, but it wasn't like what I mean. I haven't been on social media. Like I'm on Twitter. And that's really just like hurricanes news and podcasters. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
you
Like I
used to
don't
get on
like
Facebook to put your pictures up about how good your life
I
was and to
was
show your kids' pictures or something.
exactly like and when like food pictures started, when you were like able to do like mobile uploads and you
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean, and like that whole stuff, and then you started with like with filters and you know what I mean, like you could put like the dog ear face, like that's what it should have been like to for like the misinformation and nobody's like nobody asks when they see something like, hey man, where did this come from? Like people just take it at face value and then they go off that. Look, I'm saying that because I was that right, like, and I always tell I will always tell this story that a confrontation between those kids from that private school and the Native American guy at like the
yeah.
Washington Monument. I went on a tangent. I just saw the picture. Didn't even like read the 100% honest. Didn't even read the story, right? And in the story, it didn't say anything different till days later, right? Then later we're like, oh well, we were wrong. But I already made that stupid post, and I was like, you know what? I'm never doing that again. That's why, like on this pod, we never talk about something that just happened, right? Like we always give it time to breathe and like to process it because it's not
Right.
that I don't want to be wrong, but it's like I don't want to like we did it once with the New York Giants thing, right? Like we
Yeah.
did it once and we had to like backtrack off and we just went on a stupid tangent. Like, look, we didn't read the story, we're just gonna make fun of him anyway.
Wait, we
Like, and
saw
that
the
was, but
headline.
that's one thing.
Like practice?
Yeah, we saw the headline. Like, but yeah, practice. Like, oh, you don't need analytics. You're stupid. Uh, you know what I mean? Like, but I think that's the easy thing to make fun of because it's just the sports. Like, I'm sure there's a ton of Giants fan, like our boy Danny. You know what I mean? Like, was like, hey man, you're totally fucking wrong about this. Like, you should have read the article. That's not what he meant. He sent me the video. Then I felt like a jackass. But I was like,
Yeah.
that's a lot smaller than like to be wrong completely about like wanting to like be a proponent and push a civil war. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like that's a totally different. Like it's so crazy that like that's the thing that's like being openly talked about now. You know what I mean? Like that. Like I remember years ago. I don't know when the first movie came out. When I saw The Purge, I was like, this is some MK Ultra propaganda type shit already. And this
Right.
was before, mind you, this was before fanaticism of like of a Trump or
Hmm.
the craziness of social media and all this stuff. I was like, yo, man, I don't like some. I promise, and I swear to God, when I saw that, I was like, oh, this isn't a good sign. Or like, and then there was like a series on just like it's one of those things that goes into like the atmosphere and it just leads to like negative shit. And yes, it's just a movie, but like people believe that stuff, right? Like because
Yeah.
the people they listen to on the left or right media are actors, right? They're reading from a script that was given to them, and they're reading it off a prompter. Like they're believing these people like they're them, and they have nothing to do. The people who you admire and wear bow ties and cover up for their brothers that's a governor, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
all these people are elite, bro. Like you have nothing in common with them. You have more in common with the people you're looking at right now on this YouTube channel than you will ever have on somebody on those channels. They're trying to gas you up for something that you should really be looking at. Like I've told you the story. I've said it before, and I'll end it after this little quip. Like when the Tea Party first started, they were actually gonna go after what was it after like lobbyists and stuff like that, right? Like money in
Hmm.
politics, and the Koch brothers sent buses out. Or like, no, your real problem is this Obamacare. That's the issue. They're trying to take everything from you. They radicalized them from that, and then they just it steamrolled into that because you had
Yeah.
tons of people in like suits and buses are like, oh no, we'll take you to Washington. But what you're really upset about is this Obamacare. You can't be mad at lobbyists. They're the good guys. This happened probably what 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 2000 was it Obama's first term, 2008,
2008.
right? Like around
Yeah.
that
12,
time,
13. Yeah.
2008, 2009. Yeah. So
Hmm.
like it's a very easy thing to be manipulated if you're in a crowd and you're like, yeah, okay, yeah. Like, and it's the same thing that happens as fans, right? For football teams and college football. Like when you're crowd, you have that crowd mentality, and it becomes harder for you to think logically and critically.
Yeah, you have to look at where your those messages
Gotta
are
love
coming from, right? Who's telling you that there's going to be a
hmm
civil war between the Republicans and Democrats? It's not you
And
and
how would you
I.
know the
It's the
difference?
people in power, people that have money that are telling you these things. I foresee a civil war in this country. Like, yeah, oh yeah, you're a billionaire hedge fund manager, and then who is it
Hmm
between? It's not gonna be between you. He's not
Yeah,
implicating himself. He's like, God forbid, it's us. No, no, you guys. It's gonna be between the left and the right. There's a breaking ideology. Yeah, because we're idiots because we
yeah,
can't see
yes, we
it.
are.
Who's delivering the
We're
message?
idiots.
And I've seen a couple other
Exactly.
people, I've seen it from other people, and they're again people of influence, people of power. So look at who the message is coming from, and then really think like maybe we are being divided in this country. I mean, we are obviously, but for
We
those
are
of you
100%.
that haven't realized it, when you read an article and it's a hedge fund billionaire telling you there's probably
hmm
going to be a civil war in the next 5 to 10 years, and it'll be between the left and right, but they're
You
kind
know,
of trying to
you know,
instigate that with all the propaganda, with everything.
mhm.
It's
They're
hard
putting
to
it out into the
speak
atmosphere.
because
You know,
I can't believe that we as a people don't see that what's clearly been happening in this country for a while
and
now.
the, and, and there's gonna be people who like listen to this and watch this and all that stuff for like, oh no, but they're wrong. It is between the left and right. We're like, how, bro? Like, I always have a question when people bring it up because I have conversations with like my doctors that and people that I work with
Hmm.
that bring up these topics, right? Because 90% of people just want to talk politics, because everybody has an opinion on it. Again, I was that
Yep.
guy, right? So when they say that, I was like, how are you gonna tell the difference? Like who's left and who's right? Like, are you gonna ask them? Are you gonna go around carding? Like, there's no D or R on your driver's license. Like, is that like, are you gonna go down? What? How are you gonna know who to shoot? Like, who? You know what I'm saying? Like, because I want to get down to the nitty
They're going
gritty
down
of it, right? Like,
to the county courtause or the
yeah,
DMV or the
exactly.
BMV as it's called up here to see who registered to vote and what party they registered for. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
How are we
exactly.
going to
Like, what?
identify
What do you?
people?
What do you? How are you gonna identify people? Are you just gonna assume they are because of what? Like, how would you know? Like, how do you know that most Hispanics are very conservative because they're very religious, or are you just gonna assume that they're liberal because they try to take your job because bow tie guy told you to? Like,
Right.
how are you gonna decipher who's what, man? Like, it's gross, bro. It honestly is. That's why, like, that's why I don't watch any of that stuff anymore. Like, I'll read the articles. I think because the articles don't get me as upset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because when you watch the video, like, you want to punch that person. When you read the article, like, okay, it's
They got a
literally more
punchable
black and
face,
white.
especially
They got a
during the bow
punchable
tie.
face. Dude in the bow tie he's always listening with his eyes and shit.
Mm.
I can't stand that dude. I forgot what I was gonna say. But yeah, man, I don't know. It's stupid. Now I remember. That's why I don't watch any of that stuff, and I just watch 20 episodes of Vincenzo. Shout out to you, my brother.
You're
Before
welcome.
we go into this, hey man, I watched 20 episodes of an hour and a half episodes, dude, of a Korean drama, and
And
it
it
was
was one of the best shows we've ever
fantastic.
seen. It was.
Oh my god, it was so good, dude. You know what? We're going to. You know what I loved about that show the most? I always try to like catch my wife up about what you know what I mean. Like when I would watch it, because she
Hmm.
wasn't watching. She's like, I'm not watching that. It's like every character mattered, right? Like it was there. They very rarely had a character show up that was just like a throwaway,
Right.
right? Like yeah, you had the little like side lawyers or whatever that worked for like the firm,
Hmm.
but like not you know what I'm saying, like the none of the real, even like the guy who did the invitations, which by the way made me want to watch Parasite because I haven't seen Parasite yet. It's like
Uh-huh.
I want to get these references. You know what I mean? Dude, that show was so good, bro. Like that, and look, I'm glad. I'm not gonna spoil it because I'm sure there's gonna be somebody. You know, what I mean, I recommend it. I recommend it to everybody I talk to or that listens to this pod. What I loved about that is that the bad people got what they
What they had
deserved.
coming to them. Yeah,
Yes, like
for
I
sure.
would have hated. I would have hated if it was like some weak ass. You know what I mean? Like gunshot to the head. Like I would have hated that. I was like,
Yeah.
that's so unfulfilling. You know what I mean? Because they were so terrible. Dude, it was such a good show. I should have watched it 2 years ago when you first recommended it, but it is what it is.
Was it like last year? I think, or earlier this year. But earlier this year when I saw
Uh
it, because
early
I
yeah,
think it
you
just
watched
came
it.
out in Korea, and then after it played in Korea last year or this year, then they put it on Netflix, and it's like
That
the
must have like
fourth highest rated show in Korean history. I think.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Dude, like that must have been on like every like a 1 day a week, right? Like it was one that had to be like a week to week thing.
I
That
think
couldn't
it
have
was
been like a
Saturdays and
binge.
Sundays. I think it was Saturdays
That's
and
insane.
Sundays. Yeah,
Oh my
it
god,
can't
dude,
be every
that
day.
took me out. That can't, it's impossible, dude.
Yeah.
That was such a soap opera, bro. That was such a novela. It was fantastic.
But that's what I love about the
Fan,
Korean dramas. Before we like they're like novellas, right? They're not like American soap operas that have been going on since the 50s and 70s and whatever, right?
yeah.
Whatever these, I don't even know the names. The only one I General Hospital, but I don't know how
General
that's probably been
Hospital, yeah,
going on for 30, 40, 50 years. No,
yeah, maybe more.
yeah, novellas are like you have that one season and
Yep.
it's done and you get your story.
Yes.
Maybe you get closure, maybe it's like an open-ended, ending or whatever, but like it's done. That's
Yep.
not going on
Hmm.
for another 50 years.
None.
So that's what I
Nothing.
liked about
Dude,
Korean dramas. I loved it when I was stationed over
I
there.
remember
Great TV.
I remember a novela that I watched with my grandma back when I lived in Panama. It came on Wednesday nights at like 9. It was Cañaveral de Pasiones, bro. Like
Bro, like
Spanish soap, bro.
Marimar
Like
with
oh dang.
Talia.
Oh,
That's
Mari
it.
Mud, hell
It's
yeah,
done.
bro. Maria del Barrio. Come on, son. Don't get me started out here, boy.
All right.
Oh man, yo, shout out to Vincenzo. Speaking of drama, let's get to the last topic of the day, man. Look, we talked about this all day. I was like, look, I don't want to talk about this because then we're not gonna have anything to talk about if, in case we
Mhm.
do a pod.
Yeah.
So let's just wait. I look. I'll say I don't have a problem. Hindsight being 2020. I'm being completely like while it was happening, I was more anxious about the fact that we could have kept Manny Diaz. Right. That's what I was more like. Oh, like it's because I knew. Yes, was I initially hyped up when he got bought out? Not thinking about the context of, we didn't really do a coaching search there either. Like
Mhm.
that was just we went and got the Temple head coach again. Like
Yeah.
that's all we just did. So I didn't look at it. I was like, oh man, Manny Diaz was already here, had a really good defense. It was aggressive.
Right.
Kind of played, kind of played like old school you hitting the court, smashing you in the mouth.
Mhm.
Not realizing that every year got worse from 2017 to now.
Mhm.
He should have been fired long ago. First of all, should have never had the job. Blake James destroyed that whole situation, right?
Yeah.
How he got fired and how long it took.
April 10th,
How long it took.
2019. I just want you to see
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Hurricane fans celebrate the new Miami with. Yeah, dude. He
Just
sold
want to
us,
let you
boy.
just want to
Listen,
let you
man.
know how excited you guys were, and then when this guy was on his last few weeks, everybody
Yeah.
was trash talking this dude. I'm
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
remember, like everything's hindsight, like you said, hindsight. Everyone's Nostradamus. Everyone's like, but this guy's terrible. We should fire him. Like,
Yeah.
you guys were celebrating. You were celebrating.
Yeah.
You got a Miami guy, even though he
You know.
went to Florida State, but he's got Miami roots. He's
Yeah.
Cuban. He had the
We
turnover
even don't.
chain. He had
You know how.
everything
Look.
going for him.
You know how. Look, I'm gonna call us out and myself. You know how fraudulent we were with that. We let a Yono Sabo ass Cuban.
Yono Sabo ass Cuban.
You know what I mean? Like we let that slide where like people would just not realize that he didn't speak Spanish. Look, speaking Spanish has nothing to do with recruiting. Has zero to do with coaching. Doesn't matter at all, right? Like that's not what it is. But the context of how I'm talking about it is you forgot your roots. You know what I mean? Like, look, I struggle with it, right? Like, and just like Mario Cristobal said at his conference, like, when you're around only Oregonians, it's very, you lose that Spanish. Manny
Yeah.
never had it. You know what I mean? Manny never had it. So it's look, did I fall into it? Yes. Did I get caught up in the hype of the chain when I first saw it in 2017? Yes. I'm completely being honest with you. When the moment I
I
was
know.
out.
That's why I'm throwing it back in your face.
Yeah, look,
I know you
the
did.
moment I was out was North Carolina. This was before the loss to FIU.
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina, 4th and 18. They lost that game because they gave up a 4th and 18. I was like, oh, this is it. Oh, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because this, I was like, there's nothing else you need to show me here. Like, this is who you're gonna, like, you can't learn on the job here. And yes, I
I
watched
mean,
every game because
he had a terrible
I'm
end
a
to was it
psychopath.
last season, 2 seasons ago, where they lost to like FIU and Louisiana Lafayette or some
Two
crazy
see,
like terrible
dude,
three straight
they
losses.
lost. They lost to FIU. They lost
Hmm.
to Duke, and they lost to Louisiana Tech. They got shut out by Louis. Bro, you're
Yeah.
Miami. You get shut out by Louisiana Tech. Shut out. 14-0. You no longer deserve to have a job. I don't like, but I think everybody was asleep at the wheel, right? Like they're getting ACC money, so they're like, oh, you know what I mean? Like doesn't really need to. Blake James was a terrible hire. Was like a guy that they brought in from like was like at the ticket department and grew through the organization. All right,
Right.
cool. That works sometimes.
Hmm.
That works at smaller schools that don't have one a history, two a psychotic fan base.
That's the problem, right? History. That's all Miami's
Yes,
been living on. Fumes of history of how great we were.
yeah,
The 2001 should
yes,
have been
but you
2002,
have
and then 80s and
yeah,
90s.
but you have some. But the thing is, you have like if that was a history that was 100 years ago and there's nobody alive, it's a lot easier to just pass it off,
Yeah,
right?
like Notre
Like,
Dame. I
hey
don't know how
man,
they
like
still go on thinking that they mean
because
anything.
they have their own network, right? Like
Yeah.
that's why like that's what it is. Like they have NBC, they're independent, they make
Hmm.
that dirty money. Like then like that's a very different situation. Like, look, at the end of the day, yes, were we hyped? And after that third, I think that was the third game of the season when they gave their second game of the season. No, it was the second game of the season because they played week 0 and they lost to Florida,
Hmm.
right? With Jaron went lost to Florida, but they showed some fight. They lost like 41-38 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, you lose Florida, that's not a bad loss because SEC team, you got a first year head coach in his first game. You show some heart, yada yada. 4th and 18 happens. The second game, you give it up, untouched. The guy just, you know what I mean, like gets to run and run out of bounds, save time on the clock. Everything. I was like, oh no 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 no. Like I'm gonna have to watch him learn on the job at the school that you know what I mean, that I learned how to speak English over. I can't do this, bro. Like I couldn't. And then that's the Florida the FIU game.
I mean,
You
why
should be
not? Minnesota did it this last weekend. It's a pro football team, and they lost
yeah
to the Lions. And they started playing
yeah
prevent defense, and they let the Lions come back and beat them.
yes.
And I'm thinking, like, that dude's he's not a rookie coach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so cut
Yes,
Manny some slack.
does it? Yeah,
I'm
till
just playing
till
devil's
FIU
advocate
then,
here,
right?
man.
I know till FIU then, right? Like till FIU then Duke then Louisiana Tech.
Mm,
Like it happens, right? Like you're gonna take your hits. First year head
yeah.
coach, given, right? Okay, next season, defense gets a little worse. Offense is okay. You know what I mean? You got De'Aaron King that patches over a lot of stuff, running all over the field. Basically, gave his career to you
Yeah.
because tore his knee out and then his shoulder. But you don't. You keep playing the senior guys. Hey man, you got all these young guys. Let's play them. Like we've seen what the senior guys can do. They've been here for 5 years. Let's play
Yeah.
some of these young guys. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna do the rebuild, you cut out some of the fat. You know what I mean? And let's see what these young guys have. See what strength and going into the next year's recruiting. Doesn't do it. Doesn't do it. Roll that into 2021. Only plays the young guys because all the old guys are hurt. Cameron Harris, God bless him, running back for 5 years at Miami, would have a couple breakout runs, but for the most part, 2.1 yards per carry.
Hmm.
Had 3 freshmen beneath him. Never played him. Tyler Van Dyke only plays because they rushed De'Aaron King back. Like all these decisions lead him to getting fired. He should have been fired at 2-4. Blake James didn't want to do that. Blake James then goes on a personal tirade about how like we have to reevaluate Manny Diaz, tries to take the pressure off him, gets fired after the Florida State game. It goes into a shit show.
Here,
It
look.
does. Like
Here's what should have happened. What should have happened was Blake
everybody
James
should have been fired.
should have been fired first, and he was, but early.
Yeah.
Like you said, when they're 2-4, fire him early, bring in an AD,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yep.
whatever, spend weeks because they're 2-4, spend time looking for an AD,
Mm-hmm.
hire an AD that'll hire a coach that comes in,
AD.
before the the early signing period, and
which is
instead of
Wednesday now.
like
Yeah.
this guy coaching, knowing that come Monday noon, because that was the deadline they gave Cristobal, he might be out of a job. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm not defending him because it happens in the in the regular world and in the real world,
Every
except that
job ever.
it's not
Yeah.
publicized, right? We're not in the public eye.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but Jesus, did they just handle it wrong? I'm not,
Yes.
every other school does it that way. Every coach does it that way, right? Lincoln Riley left. People are
Hmm.
criticizing Lincoln
Brian
Riley.
Kelly.
Uh, what do you expect them to do? Like, you just got to get to the next
Yeah.
job. It's the nature of that business where you got to get to the next job
Yes.
and start recruiting because of where we are in the time of year, right?
Hmm.
Manny, I was reading an article from the Miami Herald. I told you I went into the archives. I had to use I couldn't just do the regular Google search. I had to use the Google
Yeah.
News Archive and the tools to just look for articles between 2018 and 2019 to see like
Hmm.
the fan base reaction when he was hired. All this, obviously they're gonna have the stories, right? The Miami boy and the Cuban connection, and there's a picture of him and
Yep.
his dad right here,
And his daddy. Him and his daddy.
and
Yeah.
him and his daddy, and he's so obviously, look, he went to Florida State. We talked about that, which is funny that he ended up coaching Miami, but he went to Florida State, was an
Hmm.
intern at
Hmm.
ESPN, did analysis, video
ESPN
breakdown,
had a
put
whole thing.
together.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
ESPN had a whole thing about him, like how he goes from video editor to head coach. Very, very
Right.
promising, very promising and uplifting article about how Miami boy is gonna do good, yada yada yada, because he has ESPN
Yeah.
ties, ESPN
Yeah,
coverage. Yeah.
worked
Yep.
for Amato. When Amato left Florida State, he went with them, coaching like linebackers and then leading, the defensive backs and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And so, like, I've read these articles about his progression from like being an intern to like knowing about like actually breaking down video and all that stuff. And so, again, going back and reading these, I can understand why the Miami fan base, at least at first, would be excited even for a first year head coach
Yep.
because they see all these things. He's got this experience. He was under Bobby Bowden. I see initially he was like a volunteer. He just said, I'll do it for free. He had, I think,
Yeah. He
Sterling
was a
or
GA.
Shannon Sharp call Amato to see if he can get him on his staff. He said he'd
Yep.
volunteer and do it for free, and he did. Eventually, he got a paid gig, and then when Amato left to go coach, he went with him, and he has these things that he's climbed. He's gained experience. He's been
Yep.
with good coaches, so I can see why. And he was with Rick, even though Rick at the end of his career wasn't the same. Not that he wasn't a good coach, but after the fact, we find
He was
out
at
that
the
he
end.
had the his the illness, his health wasn't there, and
Yep.
so you could
Yep.
understand why he left Miami early and why he probably wasn't giving Miami all that he could. Not that he purposely was. He didn't have anything else
He
to give.
couldn't. He couldn't. Yeah.
And
He
and even
resigned.
then,
Yeah.
he was the right pick. Had he been healthy, man, Miami would have been. They were relevant for a year, right? That's
Yeah.
when the whole
But
turnover chain and everything else.
they started
They
10
were
and 0,
relevant.
bro. They started 10 and 0. That ended the year with three bad losses. They lost to Pitt. They lost to Pitt. They lost to Clemson. Got destroyed by Clemson, and then they lost to Wisconsin in the bowl game, in the Orange Bowl game.
Yeah.
Like it was 10-3. Bro, like you go back to that Notre Dame Miami game that week, that year, that stadium was a rocking.
It
Like,
was.
bro, like when the Canes show up, the city shows up. Man, like it's insane. And it was
Which,
and
by
that
the
was just
way,
1
they don't
year and
need a
15.
stadium on campus.
No, they don't. I think it's
That's a
stupid.
private school. Mike Ryan and whoever else is saying that they don't, I agree with them. They don't need a stadium on campus. They have 17, 18,000 students. People, the fans of that team, they're not even students. The majority of the fans are probably never stepped foot on that university.
No,
But it's
never taken
because
a
it's a
class.
Miami thing, right? Hashtag
Yep.
because Miami. That's why they love that school. And when it's
don't need a stadium. I don't want a stadium.
they don't need it.
Look, if John Ruiz, which is about to sell his IP for $20 billion when it goes public here, man's gonna be the richest man in Miami history, right?
Yeah.
Legally, I will say it like that.
Legally.
Legally, because cocaine cowboys. But put that $500 million towards the program. Like put 250. Like don't even put the full 250, the full 500. Put that 250 towards a program that you know what I mean, and build out more hospitals. Do something like I don't. We don't. They don't need a stadium, bro. It's 45
No,
minutes. 40 everywhere is 45 minutes in Miami with traffic. I
Miami's
don't
huge.
care that it's
Everywhere it's at least 45 minutes, man.
everywhere is
and
45
we
minutes.
and we drive. They'll drive.
And they'll drive. They show up. Look at Notre Dame. If you build it, they will come. This is Field of Dreams, boy. This is that stadium is a rocket. We were in a stadium 20 something years ago, right? 20 years ago, Florida State, Miami, Doak Campbell. We've never like it's a when those two teams are cooking. There's nothing
Yeah.
like it,
And Florida State
right?
didn't have a
So
particularly good year that year either. That was like a year after they won the championship, or
yeah,
2 years
I know, but
after
I'm saying like,
when we
but
went there.
it's
But
still
yeah,
Florida State, Miami. But like you still had top players. You just weren't. You know what I mean? Like you weren't. I think you were still like top 15.
Anquan
But
Bolden was still there. Yeah. That was like his
yeah,
last year.
Anglo. Yeah, so like when it happens, it happens. How we treated Manny at the end was inappropriate, right? Improper. I'll give you that. I'm not debating that. But I also don't care because that's the price of doing business.
No, yeah, and
You
look,
know
I
what I'm
don't
saying?
like
Like
he got bought out. Like he doesn't care. Like
eight
I don't
milli,
feel bad
8
for him.
milli.
He got paid.
Yeah,
Here, let me
8
ask you
milli.
this, and I think I know what your answer will be. If they had given him the resources that they're giving
No,
Cristobal now last year,
no,
right? If they decided
doesn't work.
not pay him, maybe they do restructure his contract. But if they pay him and the money was injected into the program to actually hire a top level staff,
Mhm.
and which would then attract recruits. Do you think that would have made a difference in how he played, or if they had done it 2 years ago? Do you think it was that, or he's just not that type of coach?
I think just watching the games, right? Like I sometimes watch the press conferences, but it's very difficult because it's like hearing the politicians speak.
Yeah,
You know
I
what I
know.
mean? Like
I've,
there's no like it's very much like it's very uncomfortable for me because like
mhm.
as I'm trying to like extract myself from politics, like listening to a Manny Diaz press conference is very much so like saying nothing but coach speak is one thing, but like he's coach speak with politicians speak. It's too much,
I
right?
mean, and it makes sense who his father is, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Like I think he doesn't know what he doesn't know. You get what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
that Blake gave him the opportunity to hire a DC. He goes, "No, I'm gonna do it myself, bro." Like you can't. Like
you
you
can't.
could barely be a head coach, my guy. Like you, he had the opportunities to make those right decisions, but he constantly didn't because he had no experience. Like it's very easy to say what you would do if you were the guy, right? When you're trying to become that guy, right? When you're like growing in that organization or in that company, like, oh man, when I'm managing, I'm director. But you don't know everything that director and that manager gets the email about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You don't know every meeting that person's
Yeah,
in. All you see are those 2 to 3 minutes that you see him that interaction might not be so nice. You're like, oh no, I'm gonna be nicer when I'm him. Nah, bro. Like you have to. There's a reason why Cristobal took the job at FIU. There's a reason why Cristobal was back at Miami and go, nah, man, I'm gonna go learn from Nick Saban because I don't know what it takes to be a coach yet. I need to go learn. There's a humility that there's a humility and a drive that Cristobal has that a Kirby Smart has, a
no,
Mel
I'll
Tucker
stop you
has.
right there. There's no humility there. All right, no, there is no
And who?
humility there. Don't you look? Stop doing this. Take your face,
No,
remove it from
no,
his
no,
ass. All right.
no, no,
Then
no,
look,
no. I'm
he
saying,
got
look, let me
Saban
finish.
or Alabama reached out to him and he said, "I'm out there because that's going to open doors to me." Let's not say
Yes,
there's a humility like
but
being
no,
whatever he
but
was
you
going to be
have,
at
but
Miami to go to
right.
Alabama.
Listen, listen,
No,
listen.
I'm done listening to
But
you. I'm gonna put you on
no,
mute.
but
Humility.
listen. First
This
of all,
dude went to
yeah,
Columbus. Get out of here.
I know, private school. Cranbrook is a private school. You got your parents got a real good marriage. Yeah, I know. Listen, what I'm saying is that Manny doesn't make that decision, right? Like Manny goes, "Oh, no, I'm gonna be the guy." Like you know what I mean? I'm gonna be like, "No, hey, bro, you don't know how to be the guy." That's why only Temple wanted you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's a reason. Like you need to go learn, bro. Like he got the job too early. He might have been good seasoned. You know what I mean? Goes to learn
He should have
under
gone to
not a
Temple,
Mac
maybe.
Brown. He should have gone to Temple. Maybe come back in a couple of years when you've learned how to manage recruits, how to talk to them at cookouts, how to, you know what I mean, go about it. Learn like you have to. But the thing is, like, if you're the guy at Temple, you're just a guy at Temple, right?
Yeah.
Like think about it matters who you put yourself around, right? Like if you're in a room, this is an insane. I think we talked about an insane room in 2015 at Alabama. Mel Tucker, head coach at Michigan State.
Mhm.
Billy Napier, head coach at Florida.
Yeah.
Kirby Smart, head coach at Georgia. Uh, who else? Mario Cristobal, head coach at Miami. Lane
Miami, yeah.
Kiffin, head coach at Ole Miss. Like
Those were
that's the
his.
room.
Those were his
Those are his
his
assistants.
coordinators or assistants
Those,
or whatever at the
yeah,
time they were. Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like it matters who you put yourself around.
Yeah.
Who's like you right now can't think of the best person besides maybe I guess we'll go Rhett Lashley, right? The best coordinator or assistant that Manny Diaz has been around that's made him better. You know what I'm saying? Like when Cristobal left Alabama, he still went to work under Willie Taggart at Oregon, or because
Who
Willie Taggart was there before he left to Florida State.
who did
Cristobal
Manny
was
have
already
with
up
him
there.
for a year? Manny had an offensive coordinator from Alabama, only
Dan
there for a
Enos.
year. Huh? Danny
Dan
knows.
Enos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And now
that's
he's I forget where he's at
I
now.
think he's like at Illinois or Maryland
In Maryland. Yeah, he's
as an
the
OC,
offensive coordinator in
as
Maryland.
an OC. But
Mhm.
that's also the OC that couldn't put up points against Louisiana Tech.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because maybe they clash heads. Like there's a if you like you can be successful, right? Like if you're a Manny Diaz. Look, he's been a head coach. He's been a head coach now, right? He has experience of doing it with Miami.
Right.
Terrible recruiting this year, but you have the pedigree of a coordinator. You can build upon that, learn. Like we have to be willing to know what you don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like with him, he's like, it doesn't matter what I don't know. I'm gonna put it on me. Hey, bro, but you only have 2 years of experience in being a head coach. You're then gonna put yourself in the defensive coordinator hat too. You know, like you're as a head coach, you're a managing personalities, knowing the right and wrong people to hire, and you're a CEO of your shit. You can't then also be a manager. You can't, you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
not your job.
No,
That's
that's
not
the
what.
problem, right? Like you said, he wanted to be the defensive coordinator. He didn't want to hire someone. That's not your job as a head coach.
Mm-mm.
Like you are,
No.
you're managing that team. You hire
Yeah.
coordinators. Sure, you have a background as a defensive coordinator. You give your input to the defensive coordinator, but you don't go ahead and just say, "I'm going to run the defense." No, you
Exactly.
run the team. If you have a
Yes.
background as an offensive coordinator, as a quarterbacks coach, whatever, yeah, you give your input to the offensive coordinator, maybe the type of offense you want to run, you want to see run, but like you hired an offensive coordinator, you let your
Hmm.
offensive coordinator
Exactly.
coordinate the offense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
get that.
Yeah.
He couldn't make those decisions, pull himself
And
back, which
that's
is crazy because that article that I pulled up was exactly what like his father told him. He's like, hey, you can't make everyone happy, but at the end of the day, it's like you have to. That was one of the pieces of advice that his father gave him. He's like, you hire the right people essentially, and
yeah. And he
let them
didn't
do their job. And he didn't do that.
look and to his credit, right? Like this is where I'll give him credit. Dan Enos didn't work out, didn't stick with him, right? Didn't
Hmm.
like Al Golden with D'Onofrio.
Yeah.
Fired him and hired Red Lashley. Red Lashley for the first 18 months didn't really work. Got Tyler Van Dyke and it worked supremely well. But his like you'd have to score 50 points with Tyler Van Dyke. That's the other thing. Like Manny Diaz's defense wasn't exactly shutting people down.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? You had to put up 380 yards passing to win a game against Georgia Tech.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like that a team that their quarterback was as good as the guy from Oregon. Like it's that like and I'm not look Miami's going to lose games, right? Like that's going to happen. You're gonna have upsets. All that that's normal. There's only one Alabama, bro. Like there's only ever gonna be one Nick Saban. There's no next Bill Belichick. That's not real life, right? Like these are once in a lifetime people, right?
Yeah.
Those games are gonna lose, but you have to be willing to learn and improve upon that. You don't then take more responsibility on you when you're because then what you're doing is if your defense is the one that's failing, or if it's your offense,
Yeah.
who are you gonna blame? Who are you gonna blame?
Yeah.
Like
And you're too in the weeds to actually be able to step back and see, hey, I'm a Miami fan. I'm too involved. I can't see that we
exactly,
made the wrong hire.
exactly,
Or as a coach,
exactly.
like really, you're too in the weeds to be able to say, hey, like we need to switch this around. Which look, I want to show you that article that I had up earlier because his father also gave him some terrible advice. Like it's good in one sense, but it's also terrible in the sense that Like
Zoom
it
that
seems
in. You know
like
I have my glasses in.
yeah. It seems like he wasn't listening to anyone and he followed his father's advice, and it's right here. Says my dad gave me great advice about what it's like to be in the public eye and being in charge of a massive organization, how to and face criticism, whether it's warranted or not.
Mm,
In both jobs, you are responsible for a lot of people and don't have control over all their actions. You have to stick to your vision and not be concerned about what is said on the outside, because if you're constantly
mm,
sticking your finger out to check the temperature, you'll never do anything, which is true to some extent. But if you never, ever take the temperature of the room, never read the room,
yep.
never actually take a step back to listen to that criticism to see if it's founded, you're gonna end up like Manny Diaz, without a
Yeah.
job, an $8 million buyout, but no longer coaching the Hurricanes.
Yeah. And who knows when he'll get another head coaching job. Look, he might be a great group of 5 head coach, right? Like or a solid one. I don't know about great. Because I read his like uh his goodbye letter, right? It was full of excuses to me, right? Like it was anything. Oh, it was really it's really sad to see how this ended.
Yeah.
It was, you know what I mean, and all this stuff was like, hey, bro, like there's no FIU loss in there. There's no you lost to, like I'm not like there's no you lost to Florida State. There's no like you were one of the worst
No,
tagging teams in the country.
it was. I don't like how the university handled it.
How
I'm
they treated me. It
disappointed,
was it
and
was
then
your
I'm
feelings
glad how these young men continued to fight.
exactly. But
It was
the
fine.
thing
I
is,
didn't see anything wrong with that. What else is he gonna say? He's not gonna
here's
talk about the losses.
here's the nuance of that young men willing to fight. Right, you came into the season telling us that because they're returning 22, all basically every starter.
Hmm.
Right, you're going to have the experienced team. You're going to be ready to go. Halfway through, all your experienced players were trash because you couldn't develop any of them. Right, so then you had to rely on the young guys that you really didn't coach that were playing in high school last year, right? But again, like this is his third recruiting class, right? Like this James Williams, Leonard Taylor,
Yeah.
uh, Tyler Van Dyke was actually a Dan Enos recruit. That's who he brought him in. So it wasn't a Manny Diaz thing. But I guess
Hmm.
head coaches get that shit, but like on the
Yeah.
squad, the players get it. The coordinators and assistants get that credit. So that like so like that's trying to take credit for what the young guys are going to be wasn't because of what he wanted to do. It's
Right.
because he played Bubba Bolden with a separated shoulder for 2 games, and that's why he couldn't tackle. It's what I mean. Like it's playing a De'Aaron King too early against Alabama when his knees are right and his shoulder goes down against Appalachian State. It's those are the decisions that you made that put us in this position,
Yeah. Short
and
term
that's why
thinking.
you
Absolutely.
and that's why you had to play the young guys. The young guys, I'm a believer that the young guys changed the culture and showed the fight. Had nothing to do with Manny Diaz because I saw 2 years of Manny Diaz. If they had fight, they would have had it against FIU. If they had fight, they would have had it against Louisiana Tech because I had coaches there, right? Like that was a hit, and that mind you, those are players that saw the 2017 season
Yeah.
when they won 10 straight games.
Yeah.
Those some of those players were still there. So what changed there? And the only constant is you, and you got to go.
It goes back. Look, it goes
So
back to that quote or to that advice that his father gave him, that I just put up on the screen a few minutes ago. And there's a quote that's very similar. It's the opposite of that advice, and it's kind of something that I don't want to say I live by, but I try to keep in mind, which is I have very strong opinions, weakly held.
yeah,
Right? Meaning, like, yeah,
mhm,
I feel a certain way, but like I'm open to
to
criticism,
change.
to
Yep,
change.
yep,
And so unfortunately it seemed like that's not, his father gave him that advice. It's like, hey, don't look up.
well,
Don't bring your head up to see if people are criticizing. Just keep going with whatever your vision is. But maybe your vision is off. Maybe you didn't surround yourself with the right people. Maybe
mhm,
you didn't recruit, even though those stories that I read from 3 years ago, he was excited about recruiting. But we know now that that wasn't his strong
it
suit. That
was.
he didn't like,
Yep,
not just not his strong suit. He didn't like it. He didn't go
he didn't
out there
like
and
it.
do it. He didn't recruit. He didn't develop players. He was all about that transfer portal. And how can you develop a culture when you're just about the transfer portal instead of
When you
recruiting?
have when you're mercenaries, bunch of
Yeah.
mercenaries.
Yeah. And you're not
Hmm.
developing people. And then there's no chemistry. There's no development. There's no culture. Um, look, I'm not. He's a Miami guy and a UM guy. And he was classy throughout the whole thing. But
Yep.
um, I still don't think they got the right guy just because he's a Columbus guy and he's a Miami guy. No, I honestly don't think he's the right guy. Miami just this whole thing seemed like it was
So
a
so
shit show.
take. I'll
Um,
ask you. It was a shit show.
oh,
I'm gonna ask you this. I'm gonna ask you this serious question before.
mhm.
Let's take
that he's
the
Cuban. No.
let's take the Miami connection and all that
Hmm.
stuff out of it, right? Let's look
Hmm.
at the resume.
Hmm.
Like, do you like looking at the resume? Not say Coach X right now, Mario
Yeah.
Cristobal, and
Uh-huh.
you look at it. Built FIU from the ground up. You know what I mean? Built FIU from the ground up. Came was GA and an assistant coach or whatever under Butch Davis before the FIU job.
Hmm.
Um, Came back to Miami, I think, for 2 weeks under Al Golden. Alabama goes, hey man, you want to come over here? Takes off to Alabama. National Recruiter of the Year, tight end Recruiter of the Year. Goes to Oregon. Takes over a 4-8 Oregon team within 3 years. I think it was there 3 or 4 years. You could correct me on that. Takes them to three straight Pac-12 title games. Wins two
With
of them.
two of them.
Yes, gets the doors blown off of him by Utah twice.
That's
Not
fine.
taking.
They didn't have the
You
quarterback
know what I
this
mean?
year. I mean, it
Like
is what it is.
I think it's the first time. Look, it's the first time that we hire an experienced head coach that's not from Temple.
Hey, by the
And
way,
just but
Miami hired an undefeated coach from Temple. Manny Diaz was undefeated when they hired him from Temple. Didn't
you
lose a
son
game.
of a-
Hey, there's an article that
Yo,
says
did
that
you? See,
it's a sport. It's a what is it? It's a SB Nation, and it's again from like 2000, the day that he was hired, or the day after. Miami hiring undefeated Temple head coach Manny Diaz. It's a funny headline. Um,
so
I'll tell
funny
you this.
headline.
Look, that resume and look, Cristobal, he recruited. Look, in FIU, he recruited well. He had I think he had a
T.Y.
couple
Hilton.
successful seasons out of like the five. T.Y. Hilton was one of them.
Yeah,
But
played with my
over,
cousin John Carlos.
but overall, FIU, like, you would expect more, right? But fine, that's his first stint as a head coach or whatever. He comes to Miami, he leaves to Alabama. I'm sorry, I'm not putting a lot of stock in Recruiter of the Year 2015 in Alabama. Like, he's in Alabama. You should be the Recruiter of the Year every year. You just show up with your Alabama hat,
Yeah,
your
but
Alabama golf shirt, and say, "Hey, I'm recruiting for Alabama." That's it. Recruiter of the Year, number one class every year, top two or three
yeah,
class. You don't have to
you
say
have to,
anything else.
but you have to,
Not a damn
but
thing
you have
else.
to
That's all.
remember,
And
but
then
you
you go to
have to remember
Oregon,
who your boss
and
is, though.
then
But you have to
yeah,
remember who your boss is. That's also
uh-huh.
obsessed with recruiting. So you're
Mhm.
learning from him. And look at you think look the head coaches the head coaches in waiting that were in that
But
room
that's not a
had a
credit
work
to
ethic.
Cristobal. I'm not taking it away from him, but that's not something that I count as a plus. It's just like a neutral point for me. Yeah, you have to bust your ass in
Okay,
recruiting because of who your boss is, and then you have the credentials of I'm the offensive coordinator or offensive line coach for Alabama. It's he learned for sure, like, because of all those other people he was around,
through
because of who
osmosis.
his
Yeah,
boss
yeah.
was. But I don't think that being recruiter of the year at Alabama is something that shit. I might have been like top 3 recruiter if I would have gone to Alabama. I might not have won
You're not
recruiter of the
Alex
year,
Minerva.
but I would have come in top 5 for sure. That's all I got
No,
to say is
no,
that I'm recruiting for
you're not
Alabama.
Alex.
That's it.
Right,
All right.
I got you. Yeah.
And then and then he goes to Oregon. And look, Oregon should be winning every year. It's my concern with
But
Cristobal
they
is not
don't.
the recruiting, but they do. You just look. It takes them some time. Like, they had Willie Taggart, which was the wrong choice there, and the wrong choice at Florida State. Like, it just happens. Not everyone.
Just the wrong choice.
It's the wrong
Yeah.
choice anywhere.
Yeah.
But whatever. That's not here nor there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Cristobal, like, you go to Oregon. Oregon has all that Nike money. How can you not get recruits? Like, over the last 15 years,
But they don't. But
Oregon's
they.
been getting money and recruits and facilities, even though they don't
But
have
they don't
some
win
like
though.
indoor
That
practice.
is. That's
They don't win the
they
big game.
chip.
I mean, but they've been more relevant than Miami. Grant, you're right. No championships. No championships.
Right. None.
Absolutely
Not a
right.
single one. Nike
They've
money don't get
competed,
you
I think,
chips.
in the playoff a few times over the last 10 years.
They played in the national
They've been
championship game. The Joey Harrington, Cam Newton, Auburn game. They won like
they've been
13-7.
top
It was
5. They've been.
yep.
I thought they
No,
were in
they
the
have.
college football playoff too a few times. Um,
I
I
don't know
could
if
be
they made the
wrong,
playoffs.
but so I mean, look, they've been a lot more relevant. The one thing that always, every time they play in the big stage, and it's not that they look so much smaller than the SEC guys, and even than the
Yes,
ACC guys or the Big Ten for sure. Like, that's the one thing that
and they still beat
every
Ohio
year
State.
when they're good,
Hmm.
and they weren't expected to this year. It was like a fluke, actually, is what I've been hearing
Yeah.
everywhere. They weren't supposed to beat Ohio State this year. But that's
No,
what
no.
I
I mean, who
heard.
the?
That
Yeah,
every time, not Alabama, Oregon is actually good, and I watch their games, and they're flying all over the place, and they have the right
the
players
fastest
at
people
these
I've ever
skill
seen in my life. Yeah.
positions. And then when I
Hmm.
see them play SEC teams or Big Ten or whatever in these bowl
They look
games,
tiny.
I see how small they are, and I'm like, oh, these guys are going to
Hmm.
get crushed. And
Yeah.
athleticism can only take you so far. But when you're playing these guys that are big and athletic, when you have a lineman that weighs 350 pounds and he's running a
Hmm.
4.6, it's kind of
Hmm.
tough to compete against that. You know what I mean?
Do you do you
I
think
don't think
he?
that Cristobal
Go ahead.
can coach as well as he can recruit. So hopefully Miami's getting the money now. He puts together a staff that, again, he knows that because he's an experienced head coach. His record just would show that he's a mediocre coach. He's 62-60, but so
Yeah.
mediocre is
Well,
not
that's
even like, he's
counting
just
F.
barely
That's
500.
counting FIU.
Okay, yeah, you should count
That's
FIU.
counting FIU. Yeah. 32. The 32 and 13 at Oregon, and you should count FIU. But you have to
Yeah,
look from all accounts. Look, this is I'm taking. I don't know because I wasn't at FIU. Never went to FIU. From all accounts, this is from like Bruce Feldman. They didn't have like a workout room. They didn't have a gym. They had like a broom. They had like this small little broom closet. It was,
yeah,
you know
it's
what I mean. Like they
FIU.
didn't have any, and that's FIU. So you take that into account, 100%, 62 and 60. But he again, like, but that's 62 and 60 of head coaching experience. He's younger. He already has the head coaching. He didn't. He's not. He was it. What's that saying? Like he cut his teeth at FIU. Manny Diaz cut his teeth at UM. That's the, you know
It's
what I mean.
tough
Like
to do
that's where
with the
that's the
expectations of
difference.
that program
Where,
and the
yeah,
delusional fan
there's
base of a team that hasn't been relevant in 15 years. That's tough. It's tough.
yeah, with 5 national championships. Yeah, 100%. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. We're insane. I will 100%. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. We're ridiculously, like, I could guarantee you if Mario Cristobal loses 2 games this year, there's people calling saying that he's a bum and he, you know what I mean, and all this stuff. Like it's going to happen because people are ridiculous, right?
Miami's
Especially with
losing
social
3,
media. Everybody,
possibly 4 games this year. For sure.
I, Texas
That's a
A&M and
given.
Clemson, Texas A&M and
That's a
Clemson.
given. And and you
Those
should
are
expect to lose 4 games. Like you can't, it's going to be his first recruiting
yeah,
class. You have to give the guy time. 3 years is short,
and
but
it's not even like a.
that's the window in college sports or in any sport now, right? 3
But it's
years,
not even
sometimes
like
even
this.
2.
This recruiting class. This recruiting class counts obviously because he's the coach now. But
Mhm.
literally, early national signing day is on Wednesday.
Yep.
Next year is when I'll see how much headway he's made. Right, like if he's top 15, top 10, okay. If he's next year, if he's top 10, top 5, or if he stays in that range, dude. If he just keeps
You're
some of
talking
the
about recruiting
not
classes or rank or team rank end of the year.
recruiting classes. Look,
Yeah.
I can't make a full statement of what's going to happen until I know who the offensive coordinator, like who the people around him is, because yes, he does have head coaching weaknesses, but that's why you put other people with head coaching experience, like a Will Muschamp as a D coordinator, you know what I mean, and
Right.
other, like, that can help you along the way. Like, you have to know what you don't know, and not like, I think that's why I think the more, and we can end it here. Like, I think the more important hire was Dan Radakovich, because he's seen greatness at Clemson with Dabo Swinney. He's
He
seen it.
knows how to
Now
build the staff. He knows how it has to be
he
done
knows it.
properly. And
He knows,
Miami's
like,
infusing the money into the program in order to make that
yeah.
happen, which is the important part.
That's I think
They're giving him
I
the
think
tools to
that's
do
the
it.
bigger. Yeah, I think that's the bigger difference. I think he's Mario Cristobal is going to get all the glitz and glamour of and the reaction hire. The
Yeah.
Dan Radakovich is that, oh, we not fucking around hire. Like that's what that's a guy that knows, that's been everywhere and knows what to do. Like that's the difference for me. So we'll see what happens. Look,
But at the end
I'm
of the
not
day,
gonna get
Cristobal has to
all
hire his staff. He's got to have the last say on his staff. And so it's going to be his
no
calls
100%. I mean, look, he got
on those coordinators and how they
yeah.
perform.
So we'll see what happens. I mean, look, his boy's already the O-line coach, a guy that gives you hope to one day be an O-line coach in Alex Mirabal, all 5'5",
Yeah, Mirabal,
122
that dude.
pounds. That dude is tiny. Shout out to him though. But yeah, man, look, we'll see what happens. I'm excited about it. I'm not insane about it. Did I call University of Miami and try to see how much season tickets are? Yes, I did. And when they called me back, I was like, I don't have that kind of money. So I'm going to just go ahead and let that go and try to make it those single game tickets. So we'll see what it is. But yeah, man, we'll see what happens. My brother, thank you so much for taking the time with me, man, to chopping it up. We'll do this again next week. You know what it is, man. You got anything else for the people?
Oh.
I don't even know. I don't think that's how it goes, bro. I think you're off key somewhere.
I don't know. I'm always off key, dude. Come on, you know I can't sing.
Yeah, I know. Hey,
You
you
can
gonna
throw
watch
up the
a?
U.
You
What's
already
up?
know, man. You already know. I hate it when people do it this way.
What is that?
All
What are you
day.
playing? You're
I
playing
don't know.
football like with a
I know.
little
I know. It's always like
paper
sign language.
football.
That's what it. What was it? What was I gonna say? Yo, I think I'm gonna watch Hamilton again. So at some point, man. That's my spot, right? That's amazing. I just every time.
Look, how many road trips have I gone on in the last 2 months? We listened to the entire Hamilton soundtrack 2 to 3 times
Yeah,
each
yeah.
way.
You have to.
I've
You
watched
have to.
I've watched it. I've listened to it.
Yeah,
I am living
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yes.
And it's
You're
gonna
not
happen
living
again
it.
on my way to Miami next week.
Yeah, that's a good one. And In the Heights is good too. Shout out to Lin-Manuel Miranda, man. Dude's a legend. All right, guys,
Yep.
we out.
Peace.